All right, so today I'm very happy to have an interview with Vicente from Malaga in southern Spain, where I have been. It's a wonderful part of the world, a wonderful part of Spain. And Vicente is one of this developing breed of entrepreneurs, of teachers who are sharing their language with people around the world. So I want to interview Vicente about how he teaches Spanish, why people learn Spanish, and so forth. But maybe I can begin, Vicente, by asking you to introduce yourself.
Well, hola, me llamo Vicente, and I'm a Spanish teacher on YouTube, and I love teaching Spanish. I started teaching Spanish like 3 years ago, not too much, but I really love what I do. I love teaching. I love how people learn my language, and I think it's one of the best ways to spread my culture around the world. And yeah, that's what I do. I teach Spanish. I love it, and I do it every day, basically.
Wow, every day. We will leave a link to Vicente's channel. You know, it's very interesting. Right now, of course, people are stuck indoors. I mean, that's the case in Spain, it's the case in Canada. So it's an opportunity to do things that we never had time to do. And I think it's very timely that all of these sort of language tutors or language systems like Link that are now, you know, increasingly becoming sort of mainstream, that they're available to people. But when you first started 3 years ago, what were sort of your motivations? What were your fears? How did you manage to get sort of this momentum behind your channel?
To go for the YouTube channel and online education, we could say, yeah?
Yes.
Well, I was living in Manchester when everything started, and one day I was working in a restaurant, and one day I did my first lesson teaching Spanish. I'm foreign languages teacher, I didn't say that. And that moment, when I did the first lesson, I spent almost 4 hours preparing the lesson for only 1 hour lesson. And when the lesson started, it just finished in like 5 minutes for me. And it was 1 hour. And I felt like I really love it. So from that moment, I told myself, this is what I want to do the rest of my, we could say, the rest of my life, because I like it. And the time flies when I do this. So that moment I decided to do that. But the thing is that I'm from Malaga and I missed my city. So I wanted to come back. So teaching online was, we could say, the bridge to let me come here and give me this kind of freedom. So that was the moment I decided to teach online. And when I did the first video on YouTube, I could see how language could reach different corners in the world, different countries. So it's something that I feel I feel like inside how people can learn from something I do in a room. And that was probably the first motivation I had to start all the online teaching and so on, I would say, yeah.
Wonderful. And Malaga, you know, Spanish, the one thing about Spanish is that you have so many different cultures actually that speak Spanish. So, you know, you go to Malaga, you're in Andalusia, you're in an area that was influenced by Arabic culture, and you see evidence of that in the area. But you can go to Mexico. I was in Peru. I was in Argentina. You know, all these countries have very much their own culture, as well as sharing the broader Spanish culture. What advice do you give? And I often get this question when people are interested in Spanish. Which Spanish should I learn? Should I learn Mexican Spanish? Should I learn Colombian Spanish? Spanish? What do you say to them?
Well, I would say it depends what you want to use it for. Where do you want to live, or what do you want to do? Because I cannot tell you, oh, you have to learn Spanish from Spain, Castilian, or Castellano, as we say. No, it's not. There is not like a perfect Spanish. If you, for example, if you are going to marry with a Mexican person, of course you're going to need this kind of Mexican Spanish, we could say. I think it depends what you want a Spanish for, where you're going to live. I would say there is not the perfect Spanish.
But wouldn't you say, I mean, my impression of Spanish is that the differences are not that great. There is slang, there is, whatever, Venezuelan slang or Cuban slang or so forth. But overwhelmingly, it's the same words. And so my advice to people, especially when they're beginners, you can't even hear the difference. You have to learn the basic words of the language. At some later point, if you're going to be living in a particular Spanish-speaking country, you can focus in on that particular accent. But I think for the longest time, people should listen to and read content from everywhere. Yeah. What do you think of that? That's been my advice all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I would say also that sometimes you have to watch content in different I don't know how to say variants of Spanish.
Yeah, variants. Yeah,
variants of Spanish. In fact, when I teach my students, they are living in Spain. Some of them, and I also use like Mexican videos or Peruvian, Bolivian videos, from Chile videos to teach them Spanish, because I also want them to see how different it could be, the pronunciation and everything. But of course we cannot limit ourselves to something, because if you do that, at the moment that the student get in contact with a different variant of Spanish, they will feel like, oh, this is something completely different from me. And I think we have to be flexible when we teach them our language, Spanish. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we're saying 500 million speakers. There's not 500 million people in Spain.
Yeah.
And Spain has regional variations too, and has cultural differences from region to region, and that's part of the attraction of Spanish. It connects you with so many different types of music, different types of food. Now let me ask you another question. What are the when your learners, and I'm guessing, but a lot of them are English speakers, but I presume you have all kinds of different national groups. What are the biggest difficulties that people find with Spanish?
With the Spanish language?
Mm-hmm.
Well, depends sometimes from what is the student's native language. For example, for English speakers, one of the main difficulties is past tenses. Okay. Past tenses, ser and estar, which is because in English is only to be. But in Spanish we have ser and estar, and I understand that is really confusing. But for example, for another kind of students, for example, students who come from Russia and speak Russian, one of the main difficulties, it could be the articles, but also the ser and estar. So I would say some of the grammar aspects are difficult for them, but I think that they don't have to focus too much on the grammar things. And as we say in our interview, you have to be more like careless about the mistakes, because as you say before, mistakes will make you do less mistakes.
Yeah, I should say we had an interview in Spanish for Vicente's channel, and we'll put a link up here in the description box. But yeah, I mean, you say the Russians have difficulty with articles. They have difficulty with articles in English too. But I say it serves them right, because I have similar difficulties in Russian. So, there are things that if they don't exist in your own language, you are going to have difficulty in another language, for sure. And you just have to have so much input that gradually these become, habits. And it can take a long time, and you may never get there. I have people that I work with in Russian that speak English very well, express themselves very well, and their articles like 50%. And they're never going to get better than 50%, and it really doesn't matter. And I suspect that in Spanish, if you speak Spanish well and you use large, vocabulary, and you make mistakes with ser and estar here and there, it doesn't upset the average Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Like, how does the average native speaker of Spanish react when he hears ser instead of estar? Soy feliz instead of estoy feliz. Does that cause a problem?
No. Never, because it doesn't interrupt the communication. No one is going to stop you and say, "Oh, wait, what do you say? Oh, you say soy feliz or estoy feliz?" They are going to keep the conversation. Okay, probably if it's someone that knows you later, or probably they could correct you, but probably not someone on the street. They are not going to correct you, and they are not going to interrupt the conversation because you made a small mistake. That's not going to happen, I think.
And I must say, you know, when I have taught English, you know, to our members at Link, correcting people doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get it right the next time. And similarly, when I have my lessons in Persian or whatever, Arabic, and I find as I review my notes, because my tutor will always create like a list of 10 or 15 mistakes, phrases that I didn't use correctly, and they send them to me, and I keep these as a course so that I can review them like 3 months ago. And what I find is I make the same mistake every week. Like she keeps on correcting me, and I make the same mistake week after week after week. And maybe at some point I stop making that mistake. So, I mean, that's just part of the process. We just have to make mistakes in order to eventually make fewer mistakes.
I agree. I agree with that.
Sorry.
I agree with that because I'm learning Russian now, and with my teacher, and I always say один секунду, пожалуйста, and my teacher told me одну секунда, and it's like that every single lesson. And the other day I just wrote a whole paper with одну секунду, and I will never forget that. I will never forget that mistake.
You hope you'll never forget.
Yeah,
but you might again.
Definitely.
How do you think that the online class is different from the traditional classroom?
Well, this is
how are the methods, your instruction, the way you teach, how is it different from, because you say you are a language teacher, a trained language teacher, so what do you do differently when you're teaching online as opposed to when you were in a classroom?
Well, most of the people think that when I started 3 years ago, this online thing, it wasn't too usual 3 years ago. But nowadays, as you say before, we have to learn online nowadays with everything that is going on in the world. And I think for me, online lessons, online learning is more flexible because you have everything you need in your keyboard. You just need to type it on a searcher like Google or Yahoo and you find it. So I would say that online lessons, they are more flexible and there is not any kind of limitation. If you want to have 6 students, you can have a video call with 6 students. If you want to do a live exam, you can do it with tools like Kahoot, for example. And if you want to share a video, you have an app or a tool like YouTube or Watch Together or anything. You have it here. You don't need to go somewhere. So for me, I would say that online teaching is like it allows you to use whatever is around us, and I would say that is the main advantage if you compare with like presential lessons.
You know, it's funny, the online teaching is something that has grown quite rapidly over the years, but we're now in a situation where it's a necessity.
Yes.
And you wonder how the world is going to change once we get to the other end of this coronavirus pandemic. You know, for example, medicine. We are told not to go to the doctor's office. We have to contact the doctor remotely, and the doctor can prescribe, or you know, but that's a better way of doing things actually. And I'm just wondering if you know, when I look at people who fly to Vancouver from Mexico or Korea or wherever and study in schools here, and the cost of doing that, I wonder if there won't be a shift towards more online teaching, and conversely, if the online teaching sort of methodology won't evolve so that we'll end up with a different paradigm. Because right now, most people learn in a traditional classroom. As much as the online teaching has grown, it's still a very small part of the total, you know, language learning market, call it. Do you think that's going to change?
Yes, definitely. As you say, that with all this coronavirus thing on the pandemic, online teaching before, it was a kind of complement for the lessons. But I think that from now on, online teaching is going to be like the core, the main part. And do you say presential lessons, like, or physical lesson? I don't know how to say in English. Physical.
I just call them traditional classroom
classrooms.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Online teaching is going to be like the most important part, and the traditional classrooms are going to be like a complement. So I think that is going to be the main change for the online education, I would say, definitely.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll leave it there. We won't speak Spanish today because we spoke Spanish in our previous interview, which you can all go and watch on Vicente's channel. But I'm just going to close up. I'm going to ask you to say some final words, but I just want to say that Spanish is a wonderful language to learn. It opens up not only Spanish, but all of the Romance languages. So it's not just 500 million people, it's 750 million people. It's a big part of history, the Mediterranean, Latin America, and so forth. It's not that difficult to learn. It's a more and more important language every day in the United States. So go for Spanish and go and visit Vicente's channel, and maybe you could end up with some words of encouragement to people who are interested in Spanish.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, la verdad, es good words.
Okay, all right then. So thank you, Vicente.
Muchas gracias a ti,
Bye-bye.
Steve. Thank you to you.
Muchas gracias. Okay.
Muchas gracias.
Adiós. Muchas
Adiós.
gracias.
Bye. Thank you.
Adiós.